Enjoy learning!
Hello everyone, it's me again, Ma'am Mel, and welcome to our Week 8 lesson, which is all about proofs. Our most essential learning competencies. At the end of the lesson, you are expected to use inductive or deductive reasoning in an argument and write a proof, both direct and indirect. Let us have the introduction of our lesson. When we say reasoning, it is a logical way of thinking. Sometimes you base your reasoning from different data gathered or from the given arguments. To reason out means to give conclusion or proof to establish a fact or the truth of a statement. In your previous lesson, you learned the two parts of conditional statement, which is the hypothesis and the conclusion. You can write the conditional statement symbolically. You can use letter to represent hypothesis and conclusion. For this lesson, you can use P to represent hypothesis and Q to represent our conclusion. The conditional statement, if P then Q in symbol, read as P implies Q. The one-sided arrow, so ito yun, is read as implies. So, it can be read as P implies Q. Let us have the illustrative example number 1. If the moon shines bright, then the stars can be seen in the sky. So, our hypothesis here is if the moon shines bright, which is our P. And our conclusion is, then the stars can be seen in the sky, which is our Q. So, this can be written as if P, then Q. Or symbolically, can be written as P implies Q. So, to form the converse of our conditional statement, you just need to switch P and Q. Or you just need to interchange the position of our hypothesis and our conclusion. So, it should be written as, if the stars can be seen in the sky, which is our hypothesis now, pero ito yung ating Q kanina, which is our conclusion, then the moon shines bright, which is our conclusion na kanina naman ay hypothesis. So, it should be written as if Q, then P. Or, symbolically, it can be written as Q implies P. Okay. So, if both the conditional and our converse statements are true, then a biconditional statement can be written symbolically. So, if P, then Q, and Q, then P, or P, if and only if Q. So, this symbol can be read as if and only if, or P, if and only if Q. So, kapag tama yung conditional and converse statement, we can write a biconditional statement using our connecting words, which is if and only if form. Okay, our second example. So, our statement is x is equal to negative 5 and absolute value of x is equal to 5. So, our task is to write P implies Q in words. So, that is our conditional statement. So, it can be written as, if x is equal to 5, then absolute value of x is equal to 5. So, that is our conditional statement using our symbol. Okay. For letter B, write Q implies P in words, which is our converse. So, again, how are you going to rewrite a conditional statement into a converse statement? Okay, very good. So, you just need to switch our P and Q or interchange the position of our hypothesis and conclusion. So, it can be written as, if the absolute value of x is equal to 5, then x is equal to negative 5. Okay. How about letter C? Write P if and only if Q in words. So, we need to rewrite it into a biconditional statement. So, let us rewrite this into a biconditional statement. X is equal to negative 5 if and only if absolute value of x is equal to 5. Okay, now, so let us assess if our statements are true. Okay, so in this case, let us have the assessment of our statements. This is a false statement. Why? Since it is not only negative 5 with absolute value of 5 but also 5. Okay. So, ang value ng ating absolute 5 ay hindi lang 5. Dalawa yung pwede nating maging value ng absolute value of x. So, absolute value of x is equal to 5. Pwede siyang positive 5 at pwede rin namang siyang negative 5. So, therefore, ang ating statement ay false. Okay, for our example number 3, so the given, so for our P, which is our hypothesis, points A, B, C are coplanar points. Our Q, which is our conclusion, points A, B, C are on the same plane. Okay, so let us write the following symbol in words. For letter A, P implies Q. So that is our conditional statement. So, let us write our conditional statement. Ilalagay lang natin sa hypothesis and conclusion into an if-then statement. So, it should be written as, if points A, B, and C are coplanar, then points A, B, and C are on the same plane. So, that is our P implies Q. Let us have letter B. We have Q implies P. So, Q implies P, that is our converse statement. So again, we just need to switch our P and Q. So it can be written as, if points A, B, and C are on the same plane, inuna natin yung Q natin. Then, points A, B, and C are coplanar, followed by our P. So that is our statement for Q implies P. Okay. And then for letter C, we have P if and only if Q. So that stands for our biconditional statement. So it should be written as, points A, B, and C are coplanar if and only if points A, B, and C are on the same plane. So that is our biconditional statement. So we use the words if and only if to connect our biconditional statement. Okay, let us have our development part. Most people base their conclusion on patterns they observed or from given statements. So for that, let us have our illustrative example. So for letter A, so as you can see, we have 1 plus 1 is equal to 2, 1 plus 3 is equal to 4, 3 plus 3 is equal to 6, 3 plus 5 is equal to 8, 5 plus 5 is equal to 10, 5 plus 7 is equal to 12. Okay, so the questions are, what can you observe about the addends? What about the sum? So, take a look on our given example. So, ang ating mga addends, we have 1 plus 1, 1 and 3, 3 and 3, 3 and 5, 5 and 5, 5 and 7. And then, the sum are 2, 4, 6, 8, and 12. Okay. So, what have you observed? So, let us answer it one by one. So, all the addends are odd numbers. Okay, that is correct. We have 1, 3, 5, 7. So, yan ay mga odd numbers. Okay, how about our sum? We have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So, all the sum are even numbers. Okay, now, from that observation, what would be our conclusion or conjecture? So, our conclusion will be, adding two odd numbers, the sum is even number. And that is correct. So when you add two odd numbers, our sum will be even number. So that is for letter A. How about letter B? Point E is on line M. Line M lies on plane Q. So what will be our conclusion? So our conclusion will be point E is on plane Q. Okay. So kasi ang sabi, si point E daw ay naka line M. Si line M daw naman, naglalies daw siya kay plane Q. Therefore, our conclusion will be point E is on plane Q. Okay. So, these examples are form of what kind of reasoning? That is what we call inductive reasoning. So, which was already discussed when you were in grade 7. So, I strongly believe na alam nyo na ang mga different kinds of reasoning, which is our inductive, and the other type of reasoning is deductive reasoning. So, later, i-discuss ko sa inyo isa-isa ang inductive and deductive reasoning. Okay, let us have the inductive and deductive reasoning. So, the two major types of reasoning are deductive and inductive. So, let us discuss it one by one. So, when we say inductive reasoning, it uses specific examples to arrive at a general rule, generalization, or conclusion. Or it simply means that it is a process of observing data, recognizing patterns, and making generalizations from observations. So, it also involves from a series of specific cases to a general statement. Okay, how about the deductive reasoning? So, when we say deductive reasoning, it is a type of logical reasoning that uses accepted facts or to reason in a step-by-step manner until we arrive at the desired statement, or we use a logical order to write logical arguments. So that is the content of inductive and deductive reasoning. In deductive reasoning, we use logical argument which includes at least one premise and a conclusion. The premise must be valid to have a valid conclusion. So now, let us talk about the logical argument, which is under proof. So what is a proof? Proof is a logical argument in which each statement you make is supported or justified by given information, definitions, axioms, postulates, theorems, and previously proven statements. Let us have the laws of deductive reasoning. So there are two laws of deductive reasoning to consider. The first one is the law of detachment. So it states that if P implies Q is a true conditional statement, P is true and Q is true. The second one is the law of syllogism. So if P implies Q and Q implies R are true conditional statements, then P implies R is true. Okay, so later on, we will have different examples under law of detachment and law of syllogism. Let us have the first example under law of detachment. So for letter A, CJ knows that if he will not study his module in math a day before the test, he will not get a good score in the test. So CJ did not study his module in math today. So he concludes that he will not get a good score for tomorrow's test. So let us analyze if the arguments are valid. So our arguments, so for our premise, if P then Q. If CJ will not study his module in math a day before the test, then he will not get a good score. So that is our conditional statement. So let us analyze our premise for P, or our conclusion, or our hypothesis rather. So CJ did not study his module in math a day before the test. So that is our hypothesis. Our conclusion, therefore, he will not get a good score in the test. So by analyzing for our if P then Q, that is true. Kapag hindi siya nag-aral ng module, therefore, hindi siya makakakuha ng magandang score sa kanyang test. While our hypothesis, P, and our conclusion, Q, are both true. Therefore, the arguments are valid. Okay. So, kapag tama yung ating hypothesis at tama rin yung ating conclusion, therefore, our arguments are valid. For letter B, if n is an odd number, then the remainder is 1 when divided by 2. So 11 is an odd number. Therefore, the remainder is 1 when 11 is divided by 2. So let us have our arguments. Let us analyze if our arguments are valid. So for our premise, if P then Q, if N is an odd number, then the remainder is 1 when divided by 2. So our hypothesis, 11 is an odd number. Our conclusion, therefore, the remainder is 1 when 11 is divided by 2. Okay, so let us analyze. P then Q. If N is an odd number, then the remainder is 1 when divided by 2. That is correct. And then for our conclusion, our hypothesis rather, 11 is an odd number. Correct also. Our conclusion, therefore, the remainder is 1 when 11 is divided by 2. That is also correct. Therefore, the arguments are all valid. Let us talk about the law of syllogism. So, it is also known as reasoning by transitivity. So, it has two premises. One major premise, and the second is the minor premise, which leads both to either valid or invalid conclusion. So, let us have the first example. If Zoe visits Bicol, then she will spend a day in Albay. That is our major premise. And then for our minor premise, if she will stay a day in Albay, then she will go Cagsawa ruins. So that is our second premise. Now, let us have our arguments. So for our P, our hypothesis, Zoe visited Bicol. And then for our conclusion, she will spend a day in Albay. And then for our R, she will visit Cagsawa ruins. Now, so since P implies Q is true, that is our major ruins, and Q implies R is also true, which is our minor premise, by the law of syllogism, you can conclude that P implies R is also true. And what is our P implies R? So, if Zoe visits Bicol, that is our P, then she will visit Cagsawa ruins. So, that will be our conclusion. So, therefore, the conclusion is valid since the two premises are true. So, that is the law of syllogism. Let's have example number 2. If you eat vegetable, then you become healthy. So, that is our major premise. And then, if you become healthy, then you will not get sick. That is our minor premise. So, let us analyze our hypothesis, which is P, you eat vegetable. And then Q, you become healthy. And then our R, you will not get sick. Okay. So, let us analyze our major premise and our minor premise if they are both true. If you eat vegetable, then you become healthy. That is correct. If you become healthy, then you will not get sick. That is also true. Now, so from that, we can create a conclusion. So, you just need to write your P. If you eat vegetable, ito yon. And then followed by R. You will not get sick. Then you will not get sick. So, that will be our conclusion. So, by analyzing, our conclusion is valid. Bakit kaya siya naging valid? Since the two premises are true. Our major premise and our minor premise. But there are instances that the conclusion is not valid. So, kapag na-analyze nyo at mali naman ang inyong conclusion, so our answer is not valid. Okay. So, merong instances na ang conclusion nga natin ay hindi valid. Okay. For our example number 3, if it is winter, then you will wear a wool sweater. So, that is our major premise. And then, if you wear a wool sweater, then you are sheep. That is your minor premise. Now, let us analyze our P. It is winter. Our Q, you will wear a wool sweater. And then our R, you are a sheep. Now, so let us analyze if it is correct or incorrect, or our conclusion will be valid. Okay, so our major premise, if it is winter, then you will wear a wool sweater. That is correct. But, the minor premise states that if you wear a wool sweater, then you are sheep. Okay. So, hindi true yung ating second statement. Okay. So, on that, our conclusion, if it is winter, then you are a sheep is not valid since you are not a sheep. Also, the original statements are not true, specifically the second statement, unless you are a sheep. So, our conclusion is not valid. Okay, for our last example under law of syllogism, all animals have four legs. That is our major premise. Our minor premise, snake is an animal. So that is our second statement. And then for our conclusion, snake has four legs. Now, so what do you think? Is our conclusion valid or invalid? Okay. So the answer is the conclusion is invalid or not valid since the major premise is wrong. Not all animals have four legs. To establish the validity and truthfulness of arguments, we need to undergo with the process of proving. There are two ways of writing a proof. We have the direct and indirect way of proving, or what we call the direct and indirect proof. So let us discuss it one by one. Let us start with the direct proof. It is used to prove statements of the form if P then Q, or P implies Q, which we can write as P implies Q. Okay, so this is a one-sided arrow which we can read as implies. This method takes an original statement P, which is assumed to be true, and is used to show directly that the other statement Q is true. So there are steps to follow. The first one, assume the statement P is true. And then the second one, use what we know about P and other facts as necessary to deduce that another statement Q is true. That is, show P implies Q is true. Okay, so we will apply that on our examples. The second way of writing a proof is what we call the indirect proof. That is the other way of proving which given a premise P and a conclusion Q. An indirect proof would assume that Q is false. Indirect proof is also called as proof of contradiction. Okay, so there are steps also in indirect proving. The first one, assume the opposite of the conclusion of the statement. So, contradiction nga. The question is, what if the conclusion is not true? And then the second step, proceed as if this assumption is true to find the contradiction. So the question is, how can you prove that the conclusion is false? And then the last step, once there is a contradiction, the original statement is true. If you're not able to prove it, then the original statement is true. So we will apply that all on our given examples later. Okay, let us have the first example under direct proof. If n is an odd integer, then n squared is odd. So our P is our hypothesis, our Q is our conclusion. So our given, our P, n is an odd integer, and then we need to prove that Q, or our conclusion, n squared is odd. Okay, so let us assume that P is true. Okay, so n is equal to 2k is even number. So for some integer k, even numbers is divisible by 2. So kahit anong i-multiply nyo kay 2, ang ating answer ay magiging even number. Let's say 1. 2 times 1 is equal to 2, even pa rin yun. Kahit i-multiply nyo naman ay 2. 2 times 2 is equal to 4, even pa rin yun. Okay. Now, paano naman kung gagawin nyo siyang add? So yung 2k, i-add nyo ang 1. Let's say 2 times 1, 2. And then plus 1, it becomes 3. So 3 is an odd number. So for some integer k, odd number when divided by 2 has a remainder 1. So kapag kayo'y nag-divide ng 2 sa ating odd number, lagi tayong magkakaroon ng remainder na 1. Okay. And then, so it should be written as n squared is equal to 2k plus 1 quantity squared. Ito yon. Squaring ad integer, in-square nyo siya. Kaya parehas nyo siyang nilagyan ng exponent na 2. And then, applying, we have 2k plus 1, that is the square of a binomial. Square the first term, 2k times 2k, 4k squared. And then, twice the product of the first and second term, 2k times 1, we have 2k. And then 2k times 2, 4k. And then square the last term, 1 times 1, we have 1. So that is squaring a binomial. That is our topic on the first grading period. Though the even coefficients of k and a constant one already indicate that the square of odd integer is odd. Still, we need to express it form of 2k plus 1. Okay. And then, using this trinomial, pwede tayong gumamit ng factoring or getting the greatest common factor. So, factor out 2. Dito sa ating first and second expression, we have our GCF, which is 2. So, we have 4k squared divided by 2, 2k squared. 4k divided by 2, we have 2k. And then plus 1. And then we have, let us have the representation. Let's say, let m is equal to 2k squared plus 2k. Ito yun, yung nasa loob. Okay, so since atin siyang in-represent as m, kapag ating sinubstitute na siya, it becomes 2. Copy niyo yung 2. And then, kung let m is equal to 2k squared plus 2k, ito yun. Substitute niyo yung m dito. So, it becomes 2n. And then, plus 1. So, that is the definition of odd number. Okay, so thus, or therefore, n squared is equal to 2m plus 1. So, 2m plus 1 is odd. Ito yun, parang ganito. By definition of odd number. So, na-prove na natin siya by using the direct proof. Okay, let us have the second example under our direct proof. So, our given, two even integers a and b. So, we need to prove that the sum a plus b is even. So, in proving, we can use a formal proof, which is a two-column proof. Pwede tayong gumamit ng two-column proof. One column is for the statements, and the other column is for our reason to make the conclusion true. So, ito yun. Two-column proof, the statement, and the reason. Okay. So, let's start with our statement. A and B are even. A and B are even. That is our given. That is our reason. And then, let's say A is equal to 2M and B is equal to 2P. So, tayo ay nag-represent lang. That is a definition of even number. Okay, dun sa ating diniscuss kanina, di ba, meron tayo dong even number at may odd number. Yung una nating statement doon, that is the definition of even number kasi any number that you will multiply by 2, the answer is even number. Kahit anong substitute nyo dito, pag minultiply nyo siya kay 2, ang ating magiging sagot ay even. Okay, so let us have the representation again for the statement A plus B. Ito, A, at saka yun, B. A plus B is equal to 2M plus 2P. That is adding two integers. That is our reason. And then A plus B is equal to 2 times M plus P. Paano nangyari to? Kinuha natin ang kanyang GCF. GCF ng 2M at 2P ay 2. 2M divided by 2M, positive 2P divided by 2, positive P. So, our reason, factoring the GCF, or the greatest common factor. And then, next, we have A plus B is equal to 2X. Ma'am, paano po naging 2X? I-represent niyo yung M plus P ng X. So, ito yun. Let X is equal to M plus P. So, therefore, 2X is an even number by definition. So, therefore, the sum A plus B is even. So, patunayan natin siya using the two-column proof. Okay, let us have the indirect proof. So, we have example number 1. Given angle A and angle B are complementary angles. So, we need to prove that angle B is less than 90 degrees. Okay. So, prove by indirect proof, assume that the opposite of the conclusion is true. So, that is angle B greater than or equal to 90 degrees. So, nagkaroon tayo ng contradiction. Our reason, assume that the conclusion is false and that the contradiction is true. Okay. So, let us have this. Angle A plus angle B is equal to 90 degrees. Kasi ang complementary angles ay, ang sum na kanyang angles ay 90 degrees. That's why our reason, definition of complementary angles. So, the sum of the two angles is 90 degrees. And then, from this, pwede tayong magkaroon ng transposing to the other side of the equation. So, it should be written as angle B is equal to 90 degrees. Lipat natin si angle A sa kabila. So, since ang angle A ay positive, it becomes negative. Minus angle A. So, reason, solving for angle B by addition property of equality, B cannot be greater than or equal to 90 degrees. Which shows that your assumption that angle B is greater than or equal to 90 degrees is not true. Hence, the conclusion that angle B is less than 90 degrees is true. So, that is proving by indirect proof. Okay, let us have the last example under indirect proof. So, for example number 2, no integer m and n exists such that 4m plus 2n is equal to 1. So, by indirect proof, you have to assume that integers m and n exist and that 4m plus 2n is equal to 1. Okay. So, start with the equation. 4m plus 2n is equal to 1. Let us have 2m plus n is equal to 1 half. Okay. So, paano nangyari yon? So, we just need to divide both sides by 2. So, dividing both sides, the greatest common factor 2, the contradiction is false. We cannot find any integer sum is a fraction. So, thus, the original statement is true. So, 4m plus 2n is equal to 1. So, that is under indirect proof. So, I hope that you've learned a lot from our video lesson. Thank you.